Welcome to Around the Girdled Earth, the podcast where Dartmouth stories come to life. I'm your host, Yovany Jerez. I'm a O3. On each episode, we sit down with members of the Dartmouth alumni community to explore the moments, the mentors, and the memories that shaped them, from the green to the great unknown. So, whether you graduated last year or decades ago, the conversations offer a window into the journeys we have taken and the common threads that connect us all. So, grab your favorite drink, take a walk, and let's dive right in. Today, our special guest is Jose Fernandez, who's the class of 1977. Jose, why don't you jump right in and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background and your cultural heritage?
So, Giovanni, thanks for having me, and thanks for all that you've done and will do for Dartmouth. Um, in summary, and I'm fairly old, so we could go on forever. In summary, I was born in Cuba. We lived there till I was 11. We lived in this really small but beautiful town called Cienfuegos, which is in the southern coast of Cuba. One of my earliest memories was the Bay of Pigs invasion. I still hear the bombs whistling past our house at times. We left Cuba in '67. Went to Spain. Franco was running Spain, and then we went to Cubans in the U.S. either go to New Jersey or they go to Florida. We had family in New Jersey. That's where we ended up. And we lived in a town called West New York, New Jersey, which at the time was the most densely populated town in America, 50,000 people in less than a square mile. And then I did 7th and 8th grade there, then also high school, and then went to Dartmouth.
Wow. First of all, my family also escaped Cuba when I was 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And we landed in Boston. Boston became home for me. But Lord Almighty, you experienced the Bay of Pig invasion under Kennedy. I mean, that's pretty historic. What was the core of your family? It was parents, yourself. Do you have any siblings?
So it was my mother and father. My father was one of, I think, 3 lawyers in Cienfuegos. My mother, when we came here, worked in a factory as a seamstress. In fact, until I was 13, 14, people would ask me my size, and I didn't know what my size was. My mother made my clothes. So she worked in a factory here in New Jersey. My father ended up working at a bank. When he came here, he always wanted to be a lawyer in the U.S., but he was never able to pass the bar as much. His English wasn't great, and he took it a couple of times, and he never passed it. So that was. And then I have a sister who's still in New Jersey. She's recently retired. She was in a school administrator in West New York, New Jersey.
Wow. So here you are in New Jersey. How did you first stumble upon Dartmouth College? How did that even concept enters your mind?
Well, you know what's interesting, and I think this is actually, it's something that I've taken with me as I try and help kids choose schools. I had never heard of Dartmouth, ever. I knew I wanted to go someplace small. I knew I wanted to go someplace that would be different from what I was used to. I had the sense that there was a whole country outside of West New York, New Jersey that I needed to experience. And then one day, the basketball coach at Holy Cross came to recruit me. Decided that I wasn't good enough to play at Holy Cross, but then he recommended me to the coach at Dartmouth, and I was recruited at Dartmouth. So Dartmouth is the reason why basketball is the reason why I ended up at Dartmouth. I was recruited. I went there. I still remember, like a lot of us do, going over the bridge, coming into Hanover and saying, man, this place is a dream. And then, of course, the first time we played Holy Cross, on the basketball team at Dartmouth. I had my best game ever. I was going to take it out on that guy. If he didn't think I was good enough to play there, he was going to be sorry. So I did.
You took it personally, man.
I
That's
did, of course.
amazing. But
Of
yet,
course.
he did you the biggest favor.
Yes, he did. Yes, he
By
did.
sending you to Dartmouth. That's
And
amazing.
I'm grateful for him. And he, but you know, that's how I ended up at Dartmouth. And had I not had I not known or been contacted by Dartmouth, I certainly wouldn't have gone there.
So help me get a sense of first impressions, not only for you, from you, first impressions of Hanover, first impressions of Dartmouth, but like, how about your parents? Did you want your parents first visit? Like, what were the first impressions?
So my mother, I wanted, when I told my parents I wanted to go to Dartmouth, my father said no. We want you home. And my mother said no. Let him. He's got good judgment. Let him go to Dartmouth. By the way, when I left to go to Dartmouth in Hanover in '73, she didn't come with me. She was hospitalized. She was hospitalized with her depression was so much that even though she had wanted me to go to Dartmouth, she couldn't bear it. She got over it. She was fine. But my first impression was, man, this place is different. I don't really know if I fit here. I'm going to try. And then, I had some great professors, people who I say just wouldn't let me fail. And, I had an English professor who literally would sit with me and he gave me, I think, a C- in my first paper, which was a shock. But then he sat with me literally line by line, telling me what I was doing wrong. And so my first impression was of a place that was different, that was challenging, that was nurturing, and that was important. And frankly, I thought gave me a viewpoint that I wouldn't get otherwise.
What was your major?
History, mostly as a Cuban. You'll understand this. Mostly Russian history. I read a lot of Lenin, read a lot of Trotsky, and I wanted to understand the underpinnings of communism, where did it come from, and how it had evolved. And, ended up spending a lot of time on that. Then I spent a lot of time, again, not surprisingly, on studying revolutions, the French Revolution, the Spanish Civil War, Latin American revolutions. Basically, the whole concept of social upheaval is something that really interested me. And to this day, I still read a lot of it. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from that.
That's amazing to hear. I took a very similar path, but I found I was already an avid history aficionado. So I went to the sociology route. I was like, you know what? Let me understand the first principles of social movement and like how does that happen from an anthropological perspective. And in fact, I even went to Copenhagen, Denmark, to study the third way. Right? I was like, all right, I've been to communism. Now I'm in capitalism. I hear the northern countries have a third way. Let me find out what that was.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to hear you also having a very, it was basically my way of dealing with my PTSD, right? Like this traumatic thing happened to me. Let me figure it out and get a bit of hold of it. And
well, I mean, I think one way you learn, about things, about your own past, is comparing it to other situations, and why did different countries take different paths. And I think, be it Russia, be it Spain, be it, in those days, Chile had just gone through a coup. So I looked at the Allende years and why did you have Pinochet? All of that, I think, made me understand where I had come from, and frankly, gave me some thoughts on the way forward.
So is it a something to me then to say, if you had to give a 20-minute TED talk on something, a topic that you're passionate about, would this would this would this be your topic, or would you have something else?
Oh, I'm not. I've got a pretty high opinion of myself, but I'm not sure I could give a TED talk. Uh, I think, look, especially given what I've done in public service in the last, 15 years or so, I think something that I think is worth spending some time on is democratic values, democracy, and how democracies, go awry. And I'd like to feel that I could talk about, having come from a country, as you know, that did not experience democracy, how precious it is, and frankly, how easy it is for it to just go sideways, and how we've got to treat it with care, nurture it, and respect it. And is that a TED Talk? I don't know. I think also, if I gave a TED Talk, something I've been thinking about is, what did we do right in the Biden administration in the last 4 years, but also what mistakes did we make, and how could we make it different if the politics change. So, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I could hold the attention of anybody for 30 minutes, including my audience in the TED Talks.
No, but before we jump into your professional endeavors, going back to Dartmouth, I would have to imagine that there were not that many Latinos when you went up there. Can you tell us more about that experience?
So it was, I think there were 4 of us, maybe 5 in my class. I'm not sure we had anybody else from any other classes that I was there. We had a girl from Peru. We had another Cuban, 2 Cuban guys. One of them actually he subsequently passed away, Rick Angulo. He became class president. And he would say to me, Jose, you and I are going to be so good that they'll have to change the Constitution and let us become president, even though we weren't born in the U.S.
Wow.
And he was class president. And then there was a guy named Robert Anderson, of Jamaican descent, but Cuban. And maybe, I don't recall, maybe there were a couple of Mexican Americans, but frankly, that's it. It was a very different place from what it is now. And as a trustee, one of the things I needed to do was to sort of become familiar with the changing demographics at Dartmouth, not only the Latino community, but the Asian American and others.
Yeah, and that's right. To your point, you became the first Latino trustee at Dartmouth College. What was that process? When did you get tapped for that or asked to serve?
To this day, I'm not really sure. Other than I had Jim Wright was president, and Jim, who I really admired, I had kept a little bit in touch with him. I had also kept in touch with him through other Dartmouth professors, Marisa Navarro, Heidi Whalen, and others. So he knew of me, and I was practicing law here in New York, and I was always involved with Dartmouth. So maybe that's why I had to stand for election. So that was a little bit of a political process. It was a vote. The alumni voted with 3 candidates, and I was selected.
What are the, without, I mean, and this could be another podcast, but briefly, like, what are the key responsibilities of a Dartmouth trustee, which is of any higher education institution? Like, what?
I mean, the things that we were concerned about. For example, I was head of the facilities committee. We built I think we spent about $1 billion worth of in buildings. One of my trustees was Steve Roth, who was the president of Renato REIT, probably one of the biggest real estate investors. And I was a chair. He was in my committee, and I would tell Steve that I should get college credit from being around him because I was the head, but he was the guy who really knew the stuff. Um, so one is buildings, curriculum. We spent a lot on admissions, and at the time, you may remember there were some differences, pretty strong differences among trustees. So we had to address those as well. And so these were, frankly, a bunch of accomplished and smart people, all of whom adored Dartmouth, but had different viewpoints. And they had a different sense of where the school should go.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And so you mentioned that you were working as an attorney in New York, which gave me a flashback to your dad's. He was an attorney in Cuba, but when he tried to be here in the U.S., he wasn't able to make that pivot. But it seems like you made up for it by practicing law yourself. You went to Columbia, and so then so you went to Dartmouth, you went to Columbia for your JD, and then you jumped right into law school. I mean, into practicing attorney.
No. I graduated in 1980 from Columbia Law School. I had job offers, and I didn't take any of them. I became the lowest paid graduate of Columbia Law School in my year. And the reason for that, and in fact, the dean of admissions, the schools are graded in part on what kinds of jobs their graduates get. So I decided I wanted to do international law, but I needed to do a couple of things. One is I really needed to perfect my Spanish. I knew Spanish as I was 11 when I left, so I could understand it and speak it, but it wasn't professional. And I also wanted to understand what the other side was thinking about when they came to the States, or what U.S. companies ought to think about when they went abroad. So I took a job at a Spanish law firm where my salary was $500 a month. That was my starting salary. After a couple of months, the local currency went down in value, so I made even less. And I spent a year working at a Spanish law firm, learning professional Spanish. By the time I came back, it was as good as my legal English, and also understanding foreign legal systems. And so that's what. And then I came back, and then I did jump into corporate law, which is what I did, until I went into the Obama administration 30 years later.
Why the pivot from corporate, the corporate pathway, and then back into public service? What makes you pivot that in your mind?
Well, I think I really haven't done much of an analysis in this, other than I had done a bunch of deals, and deals that were very well known and that I was successful. I had a great practice, good clients. But at some point, you get old, and you start saying to yourself, how many more billion-dollar transactions can you do? Frankly, what will your epitaph say? And I think at that point, I figured out that I wanted to do something that would make a difference, that perhaps was not motivated by the need to make a profit. And I became very involved in the Obama campaign, and after he won, I was offered a job at the State Department. And again, I didn't know what I was getting into, other than I thought I would learn something. I would be with people who had different career paths, and I also believed in what Obama was trying to do.
Wow. So it sounds like you were proactively thinking about legacy, which makes me wonder, how has your definition of success, éxito, has evolved throughout the different stages of your life?
Um, well, I mean, it's what I said. It's you when you start out, you're trying to make a living, you're trying to make a name, a reputation. Um, you are you're successful. There's always another ladder you can climb, but you're successful enough, and then where you start saying, okay, now that I've got some freedom, uh, what else can I do? And I think, given the advantages that we've been given, Dartmouth and other places, and the fact that I am extremely grateful uh, for the opportunities that I had here in the U.S., I figured it was time to do something else. And um, you know, and if I figured that if it didn't work out, I could always come back to the law. I knew how to do that, uh, but I want, we all want to make a difference, right? We all want to be, um, we all want to feel that we are needed. Uh, I was just reading I'm reading now a biography of Zelensky, President Zelensky in Ukraine, and that he was a comedian. And at some point, when he just ran for president, he said, I want people to think of me when they need something, and as someone who tried to make a difference. And in my small way, that's what I wanted to do.
So, with all that in mind, what would you tell a younger version of yourself, like in terms of optimizing your Dartmouth experience, or maybe like, hey, do less of this, do more of that? What are the thoughts that come to mind?
Well, something I've learned, which doesn't come natural, uh, is to listen. I don't think we do enough listening. I have spent time with some, uh, uh, prominent people, and I would expect them to dominate the room. And even in trustee meetings, uh, I was really always taken uh, aback by how some people could just basically listen and while the debate went on, and at some point make one or two comments that totally changed the debate, and it showed you that they had been listening, processing, and thinking. And I think we don't do enough of that. The other thing that I would say is, you know, understand the importance of a team. Um, it's something that I've learned from some very successful people, and a lot of and this is not false modesty. A lot of the deals, a lot of the transactions that I helped and I was given awards for. Frankly, if I hadn't had a team, it would have I could have been subject to malpractice. A team. If you have a team, if you get people to invest in the mission and to feel part of the enterprise, I have always thought you're much better off, and you'll get the credit for it, and people will understand that single practitioners, lone wolves, um, don't get very far. At some point, you've got to bring others into the mix, and it's something that took me a while to learn, both to listen and to build teams. But I think it's something that has served me well in my career.
So, I think that topic is very relevant in today's age. I don't know if I buy into the narrative that today's age is more divisive than prior decades or prior years. Especially if you're a fan of history, you understand that every decade had its own
Hmm.
struggles and things. But I do believe that in today's age, the divisiveness is a little more in your face because of the technology that we have, right? It's very easy to jump into social media and see people that agree with you and people that disagree with you.
Hmm.
So, given that experience that you have, and all this advice that you're sharing, I wonder what else would you say to folks who are experiencing that level of divisiveness, right? Like, how would you bring it back to, like, let's focus back on the productivity aspects of either our relationship or our metas, our goals?
That's a hard one to distill into. Something that I think as a lawyer you learn very early on is that facts matter, and you can disagree on opinions, but you should at least be operating from common facts. Be it unemployment figures, labor statistics, and I think that is, as a lawyer, you always start from the facts. If the facts are not in your favor, you've got a problem, even if the law is on your side. So I would focus on that. It's one way of starting to, we can disagree on solutions, but at least let's figure out that together what the problem is. And I saw that in Washington, but it's a good negotiating tactic. It's amazing what you'll be able to do negotiating a deal if you both agree that there's a problem, there's an obstacle that you need to get over, and we might have different ways of doing it, but ultimately, if we can get around that obstacle, we have a deal, and we have an objective that we can achieve. So I'm really a big believer in facts, and and that's something that has served me well, to be frank.
What are you thinking is going to be the next decade of your life? How are you projecting yourself as you think about next steps now? Having, it looks like you're transitioning from public life into something.
Yeah, I guess, right? For the first time in my life, I don't think I have a plan other than, I've got a few old clients that are calling on me. I may be able to join a board or two. I sat on a couple of public boards before I went into government. I'd like to stay involved in the foreign policy side. I think we're going through a period of change and a period of challenge, where the promise of America is at risk, and so I'd like to find a way of staying involved. What that will take, to be frank, is something that I'm still trying to figure out. And also, you've got to remember that you start with the family, right? The basic blocks, and then in the last job I had in government, I spent 4 years in D.C. commuting on Friday nights till Sunday at 6 a.m. on the flight. So it's time to also reconnect and address your foundations and make sure that's in place, because otherwise there's not a lot you can do. So talk to me in about 3 months.
We'll do another podcast after that.
I mean, at that point, you probably won't want to, but it's something that I'm trying to figure out.
So I did notice on your profile, you served on a lot of boards and a lot of nonprofits boards. Help us understand that strategy and the importance of that, and how to, as mid senior executives should be thinking about that as part of our experience and even career progression.
Well, it wasn't a career thing. It was more of a passion. I was billing hours. I was working on my documents. I was serving clients. But it goes back to something we said earlier. I wanted to make a difference in other ways. And so what were my passions? I believed in education, so obviously Dartmouth, but also I served on a board of Catholic grammar schools here, serving underprivileged kids, together with a couple with one Dartmouth trustee that I had served with. that was one. The other one was the arts. I served on a great jazz station here in the New York area, and then I set up the third was, the Latino issues were important to me. So I married the arts and Latino, and for 5 years, we had a Latino theater festival here in New York that when, the Times and others talked about it. And what we did is we brought together theater from Latin America and Spain into New York. We had those productions, but then we brought local Latino theater companies to work with those foreign companies from Mexico, Spain, Argentina, and see what they could do together. And it was fabulous. It was a lot of fundraising, which is no fun, but just going to seeing that curtain open and man, you had a dream in your shower, and a year later you can make it happen. And you know what? I think we've had people still remember that, and that when you ask me what I might do next, I might just try and do that. Might see if we can put that back together. When I went into government the first time under Obama, I had to shut it down.
So as we wrap up our podcast, we got a couple more questions. Maybe we'll bring it back to Dartmouth. Were there any specific memories that always comes to mind that makes you smile about your Dartmouth experience? Is there a favorite story that you tell your friends or your board members about Dartmouth that pops up to you?
Well, I've got a bunch of them. Look, we were blessed. The one is I was talking about my English professor, going literally line by line, and at some point he said to me, you've got some good ideas. You might be the next Joseph Conrad. I had never heard of Joseph Conrad, and I said to the guy, look, I knew a guy named Conrado in West New York, but I don't think he ever wrote anything. So he thought that was funny. And the second one was, remember I told you about my dad? He didn't want me to go to Dartmouth. He wanted me to stay home. So one day I go, he comes to visit in Hanover, and I go, I need to do something. And I come back, and there's my dad in Ripley Hall, sitting on the floor, talking politics with a bunch of my dorm mates. And, and his English wasn't great, but he loved politics, and he loved talking to kids. And I knew I had him. At that point, he started bleeding green, and it was amazing seeing 5 of my classmates sitting with my father arguing in a good way. And so both of those things are memories that and others. It was a great place that I treasure, and which is why, when the time came to serve, it's an easy choice.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. It's beautiful memories. So, Jose, what last question? This podcast will be seen by various audiences. Someone maybe in high school preparing for college, maybe a current student, maybe somebody like ourselves, right? Post college. What will be the final golden nuggets of wisdom you will share with them?
I'm not that presumptuous, man. If I had nuggets of wisdom, I'd be wealthy. Work. The stuff that you hear at every commencement speech, right? Work hard, believe in yourself, be challenged, and understand that there's always a few times in your life that you'll say, you're always taught to look before you leap, but there are times when you just have to leap, and have enough confidence in yourself to know that you'll have some black and blues, but believe in yourself and have enough confidence that you will succeed, or at least that you'll learn. That's easier said than done, because we all have mortgages, we all have families, but find a way of doing something outside of your immediate comfort zone, and you'll do okay. I mean, that's, I think most of us have had the opportunity to learn. We have decent brain power. We'll be okay. But don't do the same thing over and over again. And I don't know if that's going to make it to another podcast, but that would be that would be my nugget of wisdom.
Well said. Well said. Thank you for spending some time with us, and sharing with us your journey, letting us to get to know you a little bit better, and yeah, your words of wisdom and truths. And for all of you who decided to spend some time in this watching this dialogue, thank you for joining us on this another episode of Around the Girdled Earth. If today's conversation sparked a memory, or gave you something to think about, please leave us a thoughtful, introspective reflection in the comment section. And please share the episode with a classmate, with a fellow alum. That's a one more simple way of keeping the Dartmouth spirit alive through this digital age. So until next time, keep sharing your story, stay curious, and keep roaming this beautiful fertile earth. Take care.
Thank you.